So go ahead, Bernadette. You were going to say something.
Okay. I was just going to say that we're really excited, Giselle, to have you and want to thank you for reaching out to us and asking if you could, explain about your program. And this topic, definitely the specific carbohydrate diet, has always been something we want to learn about. So just thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I look forward continuing talking with all of you. Just so some of you that might not know me, just a little bit about myself. I have 2 kids with Crohn's and a husband with Crohn's. So I kind of married into the disease, not knowing anything about it, unfortunately. Um, so both of my kids got diagnosed, one of them almost 6 years ago, and the other one 4.5 years ago. Um, my son first was colitis and then moved into Crohn's a year later, and my daughter was diagnosed with Crohn's. It was at that time that Dr. Gold offered us that they were doing a pilot research on diet, and 3 out of 4 in our family, he figured we might be good candidates for this pilot research. So we decided to do the research. For me, it was a no-brainer. I have asked for diet for years, and all the adult GIs always discarded as nothing is going to happen with diet. So for me, it was a no-brainer. Our daughter has been treated 100% with SCD, has never gone on medication. She's in complete remission 4.5 years later. And basically, as I evolve and learn about food, the more I learned, the more I wanted to know about food. And with Dr. Gold, I saw the results so firsthand, and the change, especially on my son that hadn't grown in a year, and hadn't grown, had a negative gain weight on a year, and after the SCD, 6 months later, he showed his first like ½ inch, and we celebrated like there was, won the lottery. So for me, the drastic change on the kids, I was so sold on food that I decided to really start a foundation, and we funded research in Atlanta. It was the last research that they put together on SCD together with Seattle Children's Hospital, and is going for publication by the end of the summer. Positive results, and our foundation was able to fund the portion of Atlanta. So from there, we kind of have evolved, and the more I found myself listening to microbiome summits, and who does that? So I decided to get certified as a health coach, and I have put together also a workshop on SCD, and I really love to work with parents that are trying to start this out, because I remember the frustration. I remember how hard it was to go to the grocery store and just live with nothing. I literally was spending an hour and walking away with bananas. I mean, it was just so overwhelming. Nothing that I was buying before I could eat now, and I just didn't know where to go. So I'm just trying, my effort is, if I can help one family make the transition easier, the better that family will be. So that's kind of my ultimate goal. So with that, so that's kind of my background, where I come from. Many ways I say I'm just a mom that is, type A personality, unfortunately, for my kids, and I'm just passionate about it. So this is kind of the role of you guys, for me, is so critical, to be able to help and offer this as options. You're kind of the first link for many families. So, which is one of my reasons why helping you guys get the perspective from a parents that have kind of gone through it, I think is a great match as we move forward with more research on SCD and as an option for people, a treatment option. Um, and I will say, kind of as a background, I still believe in medications. It's time for medications and it's time for food. My husband is on Remicade, and you know, it's just the way he is, and we're not willing to take the risk of taking him off Remicade. But he feels great eating the way he eats now. So there's always I'm not exclusive just diet. So I just wanted to put that one out there. So you can flip the chart if you're seeing the um, presentation. So what I created is a program that is 6 sessions long, 1 a week for families to kind of transition into SED. SED is very restrictive. I find it that you need time to figure out what you're doing, not to expect perfection on day one. So this program, it basically breaks that transition into about 4 weeks, and then the 5th and 6th week is kind of what are the challenges, and I'll get specifically into that. So each session, my goal is to talk to other families about what are the physical challenges are, meaning, you know, just the groceries, just understanding what you're eating, what you need to eat, what can you eat, what can you not eat. So that consists on the physical challenges of it. Then, but there's also, it's important to talk about the emotional challenges and the social challenges, because we live in a culture that food revolves around anything socially, and what are those challenges and how to deal with those challenges. I find it is extremely important for families to at least know about it and consciously deal with it, that it does exist and how to deal with it. And the emotional challenges, many people at the beginning have told me, it's like, you know, I just can't think of not eating pasta again. I'm like, well, this almost a grieving process of what your comfort foods and many other things revolve about food, is that emotional aspect of it. So in each of the sessions, I talk about those 3 challenges because they're part of the transition. If you want to make this a lifestyle change, which is the way I see it, it's really a lifestyle change, not a diet. It's really a lifestyle, lifelong change. So, and then I provide activities and homework between weeks. So they have homework to take, they have a to-do thing, they start implementing things. And I think that's kind of important to transition through. So as you flip this slide again, I'll get into the kind of what I talk about in each session. So the first one is a lot of learning. It's a little bit overwhelming, but it's almost putting everything out there. It's telling them what SED is, how it was developed, who are the people, there's real research behind the diet, understanding kind of the science behind it. Then I talk about reading labels, how important reading labels is to be able to understand ingredients and know, you know, what is gluten? What are the 100 different ways of talking about gluten? What are the 100 different ways of talking about soy? What is soy? You know, corn, all the major categories, dairy, sugar, you know, turbinado is sugar. No one knows what turbinado means. And so on. I get into the kosher symbols. It's helpful for dairy. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the reading label, and as you all know, reading labels is just such an involved process that I kind of revisited again through other sessions. I talk about what the legal and illegal portions of it. I have handouts for all this. And I have them start a transition process. So people that have talked on the phone with, I say, just start not buying anything that is not on the diet. use what you have in your pantry. You don't need to throw anything out, but start transitioning into what it would be like to be on SCD. So nothing that you're buying in the groceries should be illegal. So people start buying more fresh foods, more vegetables, more fruits, and start eliminating what they currently have. I talk about the resistance that people might have or might have encountered in the past, but that is very briefly. I really leave that first session just to kind of the nitty-gritty of the terminology around the diet. So that's session 1. Session 2, if you switch the slide, my first part is talking about what was difficult, what was helpful, what changes were you able to accomplish, how were you feeling this week, the past week. I also talk about the stages of the SCD. There's 4 stages. There's resources out there that talk about those. I share those that explain it much better than I can. I also start then telling them about tracking different things. I definitely ask them to do a journal, but also tracking their food, tracking symptoms, and that's kind of the initial tracking process. I give forms and option forms for all that. And then the next week is a transition, is a stronger transition. So how you're doing with buying more food that is legal. I focus now on shopping. I have a list of brands, but I also ask them as homework, okay, in addition to my list, find 2 new things that is not in my list that you have found in the grocery store. So they start being able to read those labels. We can talk about what they are, why they might work or not work with SCD. So that's kind of more a teaching, reading label / learning what's legal and illegal. I don't know. Then on session 3, and I'm kind of going through this a little quick, but I want to make sure that you guys have questions at the end. So on week 3 is when we talk about the social aspects of it. Again, it's a review about how you felt at the beginning. Always give them time to ask some brief questions, but the social part of it is the key on this week. How do you deal with birthday parties? How do you deal with your child going to the movies? How do you deal with, it's just all that social surrounding. How do you plan ahead? How do you keep things in the freezer that you might need for a spare of the moment? How do you carry food in your car just in case you're stranded somewhere that you can't get food and someone's hungry? It's all that social life revolving challenges and tips of getting through that. So that's kind of the focus of that session 3. Session 3 is part of the homework is cleaning out your pantry. It's actually looking at your pantry and say, okay, identify what's legal, not legal. How do you want to clean it out? Do you want to donate some food out? So it kind of continues more specific in their pantry. Again, you focus in additional foods that they can buy in the shopping store, in the grocery store. If they're local, I always offer to go with them shopping. So that's kind of for the people that are kind of locally. I also try to teach them a little bit about foods and the alkaline and the acidity of foods and the combinations of those. It's kind of a side subject. I talk about the cravings that you might start having at this point, which is part of kind of the emotional piece of it. How to substitute comfort foods. So that gets into the social emotional side of it. And in this, I also, part of the homework is also adding more tracking, like what's your height, what's your weight, what might be your meds that you're on. So all those, so it gets a little more specific on tracking, which will help the doctors, and it will also help them understand more of their body. Then, sorry, then it gets to session 4. Session 4 is, I always have a review, as I said before, but is more specifically about the emotional part of it. So the session 3 is more social. Session 4 is more the emotional part of it. I try to go over their journals with them. If they want to share their journals, what are they feeling about their food? How are they feeling better? Do they have more energy? Do they not have more energy? Now they slowly start transitioning into. Session 4 is all about 100% SCD. We have given them 3 weeks to transition. This is kind of where you really start getting into, okay, we're on the wagon type of deal. How do you track your progress? If giving themselves a target, a goal at the okay, we're going to revisit this. This is not a forever. Don't think that it has to be forever. Give yourself a benchmark to check in with yourself about how they're feeling, and that's why it's so important to track, because it's easy to forget how bad you were feeling or what some of the symptoms they were experiencing. So that tracking is when it becomes critical at this point. More about shopping, because now they're fully 100% SCD, they should have cleaned out their pantries. If it's just a single child that is doing it, what is that one shelf that child has that is specific for them? If this is the whole family, then everything needs to be out of the house. Too tempting not to be there. And then on session 5 is again review. Then I get more into this session, kind of focuses more on the tips for teenagers and young adults. How do you buy in to that if they have teenagers or when they get to be teenagers? My daughter, after a year, decided she wasn't going to do the diet anymore. She was fine, she felt great, and she was never going to get sick again. That was a lot of negotiating. It wasn't perfect. How do you negotiate with them and trade? When can they quote unquote cheat or have a treat, depending how you want to call it. But that's why it's important to give themselves those benchmarks about, are they getting better? Are we still having symptoms? After they're not having symptoms, I say, after you're not having symptoms for 6 months, then give them some options. And it seems to work with my daughter. Some people doesn't work. And how to talk about that. How do they deal with the social aspect of being a teenager or going into college, which is very challenging times. But talking about their teens and the teenagers' years is important. I feel it's important, and that's why I cover it kind of towards the end. I discussed shopping. Are they having any challenges? It's a full week that they've been on it. Completely SCD. Are they needing more help regarding shopping? Ideas of brands. I also give them ideas of snacks. That seems to be a big challenge for a lot of people, lunches and snacks. Discussing alternatives, discussing cooking ahead, freezing items for snacks. And then on session 5, I also talk about unconventional type of food that I didn't even know about when I started all this, about fermented vegetables, about homemade yogurt. How do you do those things? Now that they have had a couple of weeks under their belt and doing it, how do you venture into that kind of next step? Dehydrating foods. For me, dehydrating food has been great for snacks. So that's why those two are kind of related, fermented foods. 4 years later, my son comes home from school and he wants gonna have some kimchi for snack, and blows my mind that he actually asked for that. Still, a year later since we started more fermented vegetables, we come a long way. It's been a long time, but it's a great thing it is possible, put it that way. So that's kind of the workshop. If you go to session 6, is basically, this last session is kind of open-ended. It varies every time. It is, I help them plan a menu. It's more a collaborative type of session. Is you have me for an hour to talk about anything and everything that they might be having a challenge, and everybody's different. So offering my support is about answering questions, it's about planning a 2-week menu and how to vary that menu. Because some people might have already gone through the stages and might be working into like real food. My challenge with the stages, we never used the stages. We went into straight what we could eat and not eat, and it worked for us. Now, our symptoms were mild, were more systemic. Our symptoms, we were not bleeding out of our gut. So I think we were able, it depends on how severe the condition is at the time, how important it is to do those stages or not. Or at least that's kind of the way I see it. I always refer back to your primary physician, to your team. I don't have all the answers. I can tell them what I have done, what it has to work, what it hasn't worked. But that's kind of the way, from our perspective, what I have lived, what has worked for us again, and what hasn't. I want to make sure I wanted to answer questions from the floor. That in a nutshell is my program. Anybody can refer, any of you can refer families to me. I'll be happy to coach them through it. I think I know you all don't have the time to spend 6 hours talking to people about foods and ideas for snack. I know you physically don't have that time with the patients that you see. So that's kind of where I'm trying to link that gap about families feeling overwhelmed, having all the intentions, but needing support. So that's kind of where I'm at with my program. And I'm just, at this point, I'm just going to take any questions, anything that you want me to specifically talk about in any of these sessions that have worked, not work. If you're working with someone and you need some ideas, I'm happy to share any of my ideas. So.
First, Giselle, thank you so much for sharing your program. What has been like the hardest part of following this for the patients that you've worked with?
The hardest part, I think, is the emotional part. For some reason, people get hung up on it.
Yeah.
I think if they have the intentions, they want to do it, but they use every obstacle that they can almost to resist it. And I think the buying gets when they start doing it and they start feeling better, all of a sudden there's an engagement, there's a different level of engagement. So that's what, for me, giving them that benchmark, it's like, okay, don't feel it's forever. Let's do a month and let's see how you feel. Like giving
Okay.
them the short steps, kind of, okay, I can do this for a month. You know, it's like it stops the resistance.
Okay.
I would say that is that's probably one of the emotional hangups. People that are gun ho to do it, the biggest challenge then is understanding all the material. There's so much information in the SCD of what's legal, and digesting it all, and now what do I get it, I understand it, what do I buy? So that's, I would say that's the second challenge is, what do I do with this food? Like, what kind of food do I buy? Because we in America are buying a lot of packaged food. So it's making that transition from one to the next. I would say that's the second challenge.
Okay. Giselle, we have a question. How long are patients on stage 1 of the diet?
You know, I have talked to Dr. Susskind about that, and his recommendations says depends. He actually likes to move people through within 2 to 3 days per stage. That's his recommendation. But he also says, you know, they can be 1 day on each stage if they're not really that sick.
Okay.
So that's he's the one that I have gauged with in the 4 different stages. Some people have stayed as a couple of weeks in a stage, because every time they introduce food, they start feeling sick again. So it has varied the gamut in which how long people stay in the stages, but I can go by Dr. Susskind that he says 2 to 3 days you should be able to move through. We never did the stages, so I can't tell you. If I tell my kids at the time that we were going to be in bone broth for 3 days, they would have rioted and never done it. So so, you know, I think there's a balance of commitment, and I'm not sure. And again, I think it depends how sick the person is. If they're bleeding out of the gut, they need bowel rest. They need to do bone broth. Absolutely. So I think it varies. You need to give that bowel rest. Yes, you need to stay longer on those stages. If we had just belly pain all the time, but we were not bleeding out of our gut, we were not gaining weight, so my child was able to go through and start eating fruits and vegetables and not go through the stages. My daughter has systemic inflammation. Her joints, she looked like she had arthritis, and she was an old lady. She couldn't do stairs. She was that stiff in her joints. But it was magical. As soon as we took out the gluten and we took out all the grains, she got better. It was days. For her, it was days before she felt better, which was shocking to me.
Do you use any phone apps?
Do I use any phone apps?
Like smartphone apps?
No, I do not. I personally do not.
Do you
But
ever
I
recommend
know,
any?
yes, I do have a list of phone apps, and let me see if I can put my finger on them. Where is, I don't have it, I don't have that folder with me. I think it's downstairs. And I can share with Bernadette, and Bernadette can share them. I have about 5 different apps, and there are more symptom tracking. So for people, it's easier to track them, track those symptoms and food through those apps. So that's how I use them, or I recommend them to use for those 2 purposes.
Giselle, since we were talking about other resources, I was wondering, in addition to phone apps, are there other resources that you're providing on each of the sessions? And
Yes.
if so, would you mind sharing those with us?
Sure, I can share some of them. I share, yes, I can forward those to you guys. scdlifestyle.com is a great
Okay.
resource. SCD Families is a closed group in Facebook that is
Okay.
monitored by the Seattle Children's Hospital kind of champion mom.
Okay.
Tally is a closed group, so but there's a lot of resources and people ask a lot of questions there.
Mm-hmm.
What other website? I use obviously my website, our foundation website, as a resource. I have all the research that has been done on SCD listed there, and that's the woodwardccf.com website. I use Danielle Walker, which her website is againstallgrain.com for recipes. She is phenomenal. I share Dr. Suskind's book that is in Amazon. He wrote an SCD book that is phenomenal. I have a book too in Amazon that I share. And I also share like forms that you guys all, I'm sure, have, is tracking your symptoms, your meds, your food, weight gain, labs, those. What other share? Oh, I do share, and I'm not sure if you guys have it, but I'll be happy to share it with you guys, is understanding the various names of, and there's one sheet per name, so understanding the various names for dairy or gluten or soy or corn, you know, dextrose and you name it, starches, all that is part of corn. So I have gathered those from Allergy Foundation, from FAN, because they're really good about having that list from the food allergy perspective. My daughter was allergic to corn in the past, so obviously I have dealt with that. Any other? I can share those sheets.
Okay. Abigail has a question. Is it possible to be a vegetarian on SCD?
Yes, I know people that are doing it. It's challenging. A vegan, I would say, probably will not be able to because you have because you don't have the eggs, and the eggs is a big source of protein.
Okay.
I know people that are doing it. It's very challenging because they depend on soy as a source of protein. But what they're using is a lot of plant-based algae for protein and omegas, omega-3, omega-6. They use algae. They're using some of the ancient, so it's not 100%. So they use more of the what you might call it, quinoa past grain or ancient grains. So they're using some grain, but not your typical over market. They're using more of the ancient grains. So it's a twist of SCD. I know some people that were vegan, that were vegetarian, that are doing the SCD and have opted for doing kind of a fishitarian. So they're including fish and not of the other meats because of the challenges with SCD, especially if you're having symptoms, because if you're having symptoms, you cannot do the nuts. Once you can add back the nuts, then they cut back on their fish. But you need to be symptom free in order to add the nuts. So in the transition, they have gone to done some fish in hopes that they can transition back to vegetarian and add the nuts, because it's a lot. We bake with almond flour and coconut flour, and that's kind of a big source of protein for them. Hemp powder is another big source of protein, and as I said, algae. I would say it's very challenging, but I know people that are doing it. They're braver than I am. Any other questions?
Giselle, I know you had mentioned that you would be open to referrals.
Yes.
How would you suggest that one reach out to you?
Absolutely. They can reach out. My coaching website is charlestonhealthyliving.com. And that's kind of my coaching website that kind of lists the SCD 101, specific carbohydrate 101 workshop, and they can contact me through that, or gisellewoodward@gmail.com. They can also contact me through that. And I've been flexible about people. Some people don't go through the 6 weeks. Some people want, buy 3 hours on the phone. Some people just want to go grocery shopping with me. It just has varied on what they buy or not buy and how much I offer them, and to support. I offer them a lot of supports and books references if they want it. So that they can have support if they want through the resources, if they feel they can do it on their own. So I cannot give them that option. Everybody's budget is different, so if they think they can do it on their own, but they can always call. Try to work with everybody somehow.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I think that will be it then. Giselle, again, thank you so much for all of this information.
You're welcome. I look forward talking to you guys and learning from you too. I know you guys have a wealth of information too. You're kind of that front line about parents figuring out what to do, what choices do they have in regards to treatment. So, feel free to reach out to me. I'm only an email away. I answer my emails a lot. So
you may regret giving us your email.
No. For me, it's about the families and helping the families, not about necessarily, getting rich on this. And that's kind of my passion. I know the road is not easy for parents, so I've been there. So if I can help, I'm glad to help. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate it, and hopefully we can talk soon.
Yes, and thank you, Bernadette, for getting this set up. And everyone have a good day.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Bye.
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 Right.